Please take your seats. Our fireside chats are about to begin. Please find your way to your seats. Our program will begin in just a few minutes. welcome back our host, Tiffany Flowers.
Ooh, the girl's still eating lunch, I see. Hey, everybody. How was lunch? Good? Yes? No? Maybe so? Good. Wonderful. Tell me what you had. I had tacos. What'd you have? Ben and Jerry's. You had ice cream for lunch. You did it right. Who else? What'd you have for lunch? What'd you have for lunch? You didn't take lunch? You had a late breakfast, so you had brunch. Okay, good enough. Brunch. Yes, I love the girls. I love brunch too. So as you can see, our sisterin and family is trickling back in, and so we're going to be gracious to them. I understand it's a Saturday. People travel to get here, so I'm going to reserve judgment if they're not back in 10 minutes, that my judgment might start to kick in. But I do hope you all had a wonderful break. And did you enjoy the Ben and Jerry's? Yes? Was it good? I didn't get to the truck. Were they cones? Were they cups? Cups. Oh, that's nice. We love Ben and Jerry's and they love us, and we thank them for the sponsorship and the free ice cream. They always take care of us. So, I don't know if this person is here, but I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the folks who have traveled a long, long way to be here. And then there are folks who traveled a long, long, long way to be here. We actually found out that there's someone in the audience from China who came to the Women's Convention in order to share the work that we're doing with her colleagues at Vote from Abroad, which is a nonpartisan organization that provides resources to U.S. citizens living abroad in registering to vote and participating in U.S. elections. So if you're here, friend, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're here, could you stand up and wave to us? Is she here? Perhaps she's still enjoying lunch, and I think that's okay. And speaking of participation, we at the Women's March really want to know how you're feeling, how this is resonating with you, what we can improve on, and we mean that from the bottom of our hearts. So in order to capture that, we've got a convention survey, for you all to fill out. And tomorrow when the programming concludes, we would really appreciate it if you could just take a moment and tell us, give it all to us too. Give us the good, the bad, the ugly, what was great, what was boring, what worked, what didn't work, what made you feel lovely, what did you hate. Please tell us, because we really do want to improve on this experience every year and make it the best that it can possibly be. Last year, we got about 50% of the attendees to fill it out, which is how you've seen we've recalibrated, but we would love to get as many people as possible to please, oh, there's my friends from yesterday. You guys moved. You were over there. I remember you. Welcome back. But I'm sure we can do better this year with the 50%. So just want to give you a heads up that the survey is coming. Please don't disappoint me or yourselves and just take a minute to fill it out. We love feedback. We love feedback. We love feedback. So back to right here and right now. I'm really excited about this next section of the day. This is a round of fireside chats, so to speak, that we brought to you on a number of topics that you all said you wanted to hear about. So a big part of the Women's March mission is providing an intersectional education and on a range of issues, because as we know, none of this shit happens in a bubble, right? So we've gathered together some of the coolest, smartest, thoughtful folks that we could to have some intimate conversations, to work through some tough questions and really try to unstick us on some sticky things. Now, I know you think fireside chat, for those of you who are familiar with old fireside chats, it's long, it's drawn out. This is like a lightning round. These are going to be fast conversations, fast fireside chats. They're going to be inspired, they're going to be enlightened, and maybe even people will be a little enraged. Maybe you'll be, maybe the panelists will be. I'm really pleased to bring you this first set of folks to the stage. I call them friends, I call them sisters. They're going to be kicking us off with a panel called White Women's Work. Please join me in welcoming my sisters and my friends, Executive Director of Ultraviolet, Shauna Thomas, and the Executive Director and CEO and co-founder of Moms Rising, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner. Get it, girls.
Hey everybody. As Tiffany said, we are Shauna Thomas and Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner. I'm Shauna. I run and lead Ultraviolet. We aim to be a political home for feminists. We run campaigns to create a cause for sexism, to advance gender justice on everything from ending rape culture, the epidemic of gender-based violence, universal health care, economic security. I'm so excited to be here with Kristen, who leads the amazing, very effective organization Moms Rising, both in terms of advancing feminist policy and also organizing and mobilizing a really diverse community of moms. So the theme of our chat today is white women's work, what it is, why it's important. There are a lot of dimensions to this question, personal and political. Talking about white women is important because white women play a very big role in protecting and promoting white supremacist patriarchy. So we're here as white women to talk about it. And I'm particularly excited to be in conversation with Kristen, who's been really taking this question of what constitutes the work and the purpose of engaging white women seriously for a really long time. So thank you, Kristen, for being with me here today.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for being here. This is such an important conversation. White women like me have so much work to do organizing other white women to stop racism and stop white supremacy. And we need to do it, and it's an emergency. As Shauna said, I'm the executive director of Moms Rising. I'm on the Moms Rising team. For those people who don't know, Moms Rising has over 1 million members in every state in the nation, including right here in Wisconsin. Can I give a shout out to both the Ultraviolet and the Moms Rising and the Women's March and members of all organizations in the room? Thank you. And as we're doing this work, the mission of Moms Rising is to increase family economic security, stop discrimination, and build a nation where everyone, every single person can thrive. And we know as we do this that there is no gender justice without racial justice, without economic justice. Our futures are intertwined. Our present is intertwined. We cannot do this work without having white women reach out to other white women to address and stop white supremacy and racism. We are part of the problem. We need to now be part of the solution, a bigger part of the solution. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. I have like reams and papers and papers and papers on this, and I probably won't be able to get to share all of them with you today, but I'm so excited that we're in conversation in here. And I just want to note one thing that's really important. This is not a 15-minute conversation. This is not one training. This is not one book. This is a daily conversation that we should be having as white women, with other white women, and with ourselves. And so I'd like to invite you all to think of this as the start, not the end, of this type of conversation.
Exactly. Thank you. And because we have 15 minutes, I'm going to jump right into the first question. Kristen, so much of our work revolves around organizing, and you and a lot of others have raised the importance of, as Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw says, being aware of our own blinders when we're doing this work. What's your advice on how people, white women in particular, can learn about their blinders and be an additive part of a pluralistic movement of leaders that are trying to build a nation where everyone can thrive?
That's a great question. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, for those of you who haven't read her, listened to her, seen her speak, is the person who coined the term intersectionality and really talked about how the various impacts on each of us are happening in different ways. And the way that I think about it, and the way that I think about trying to figure out where my blinders as a white woman, where our blinders are, is to think of us as women, as gender, in the same burning building. But in the burning building, there are rooms with different heat and different temperatures. People are under different amounts of fire. What does that look like? So finding our blinders means looking up, looking around, listening. It means learning. It means figuring out what different rooms are people in who are in community with us. As white women, we experience significantly less pay discrimination. Here's what pay discrimination looks like. Being a mom is a greater predictor of wage and hiring discrimination than gender, but due to structural racism, moms of color are experiencing pay discrimination to the extent that Latina moms are earning just 47 cents to a white dad's dollar, black moms just 51 cents to a white dad's dollar. That's not okay. That is a blinder in America about what's happening with pay that needs to be bashed through It needs to come down. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be resolved. Everybody should get equal pay for equal work. This burning building, this fire needs to be put out. And the most important thing here when we're thinking about intersectionality is we know that the people who are closest to the problems, the people who are experiencing the most heat, the most fire, the most pain, are actually closest to the solutions. And closest to the solutions that will have the most hope of having the least amount of unintended consequences. How many times have you come up with a solution and then you brought it out there and you're like, oh my gosh, that actually has an unintended consequence on my sister that I did not know would happen. So this all revolves around finding our blinders. And this finding our blinders is, again, a daily, hourly, minutely activity. And then listening and being in community, following the leadership of women of color, following the books, following the Twitter accounts, following what's being said in real time and in the past. So we can find our blinders and not make friends with our blinders, because we don't necessarily want to be friends with blinders, but definitely acknowledge that they are there so that we can have the action as white women to step forward with ourselves and look around our blinders to see the impacts that are happening around us that we may not see because we are not experiencing that level of discrimination. And so I think it's really important as we're doing this to both step forward in leadership and step back, to leave space for multiple types and communities of people being leaders and to follow, and then also, importantly, to not give up on reaching out to other white women to talk about racism and to talk about how we can be part of the solution. But being part of the solution is that daily learning, and as Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw said again, it's that finding of our blinders, looking at how we intersectionally are in the burning building, and then making sure that all flames are put out, not just one or two. I don't know if that was a good answer, but.
No, it made me think about when you're saying we have to reach out to other white women too. So I was raised Republican. I had the privilege of a lot of friends who helped me. I feel like it was really people close to me who helped me, whether they intended to do it or not, helped me sort of uncover my biases, my racism, my faulty logic, right? That happened for me in college, another privilege, right, to step sort of outside of what I was raised in, and to sort of just see a different way of understanding the world and our history and white privilege. And I am very much still a work in progress, but I think it would be easy, to sort of try to distance myself from that now and say, I'm working for change. Those women, they're doing something else, right? They're not me, they're not my community. Maybe some of you can relate to growing up growing up that way, growing up conservative, and ending up here in this room, right? And believing you're just fundamentally different. I think it would be pretty arrogant of me to say, I'm the only person capable of change. I'm the only person capable of thinking about the world differently. It's just not true. And I'm sure there's some of you who can relate to that as well. I will acknowledge, and it's hard to change minds right now, right? We can thank our unregulated technology, social media platform overlords. There are a lot of other structural reasons for why it is really, really difficult to engage in persuasion and changing people's minds right now. But it has been and always will come down, I think, to engaging people as people, right? To engaging in a struggle together and the practice together of working together as people. And not just to mobilize the people and talk to the people who are with us, but to be doing the work to spark curiosity, to encourage people to just think differently about the world and to help them kind of interrogate what led them to the conclusions that they're making. So anyway, that takes me to my next question, which is, what's your advice to white women who, when they're organizing other white women, including or maybe especially white women who don't agree with us or you?
Yeah, white women like me need to particularly reach out to people who don't agree with us in our neighborhoods, in our families, in our communities. When we look at the big political calculus, at the big level, the big political calculus is protect the base, persuade the swing. When we look at what's happening in America, as Shauna said, there's disinformation, there's less and less conversation and the swing in America. That means it's us, white women, who need to reach out to our friends, our families, and our neighbors and have those conversations that can be thought of beautiful conversations and are sometimes called difficult conversations. People ask me, how do you do it? How do you have those conversations with somebody who so fundamentally disagrees with what's in your heart and soul? My heart and soul says we need gender justice, racial justice, and economic justice. And I will say, I am personally insulted when people are not on the same page with me, so it makes that next step difficult. Research shows that when we lecture people, it doesn't work. It's like a boomerang. It's like boom, back and forth. Research shows that how to have those difficult conversations, white women having the difficult conversations with other white women, is to ask questions. This takes time. I've done it. I can tell you it usually works. Questions like, really? Why do you think that? Oh my gosh, what did you experience that led you to have this perception? What are you thinking? And importantly, one of the best, can you tell me more about that? When you have those conversations, I'll tell you my experience in this is sometimes I have this like knee-jerk reaction because I so am insulted by the lack of justice sometimes it's coming out in these conversations, that I feel like, oh my gosh, asking a question instead of lecturing someone, I'm not staying to my moral compass, right? Like I should be like right in their face, like what are you doing? And I am in my soul. But having those questions, usually 2 or 3 questions, white women talking to white women, why do you think that? Usually there's a light bulb that goes off and people think, why am I thinking that? Where did I get that information? I actually have not experienced this thing that's happening in my imagination that's completely horrid. And then the real conversation begins. There was some research that found that the problem with American society is that we stop talking at the point of disagreement, but that's when true dialogue can really begin. That's when we can reach swing voters. That's when we can reach our family members. That's when we can reach people in our communities who disagree with us. And it is the work of white women to talk to other white women across these divides, to build those bridges, to lift our family, because hello, it is really not okay what's happening in America right now. Our democracy is on the line, entire communities are on the line, and we as white women need to step up and step forward with other white women. It's not difficult, and this is what's really important. The embarrassment, the harm that happens from having these conversations is nothing compared to the experience of having to live with structural racism every day. So if you're feeling like, oh, this is scary, it's not actually scary compared to living with the harm of structural racism every day. And so white women need to step up and step forward in organizing other white communities.
Okay, so that takes me to my last question with the remaining time that we have, because you've written a lot about practical things people can do. And so I wanted you to just take a couple minutes to highlight for people, what are some practical steps you can take today, every day, to interrupt white supremacy in your own community with other white women, to build towards the equitable future we're all here to talk about doing?
That's a great question. So Shauna just said you've written about this before. You have lists of steps that white women can take. I actually did a little look, and I had like a lot of lists of steps. So I'm just going to give 6. The first step that white women can take with other white women is to talk with other white people, we just said, who disagree with us, and stay in conversation so that we can bring people toward a frame of gender justice, racial justice, and economic justice. And remind other white women that we are experiencing, as white women, far less discrimination on a daily basis than women of color. Like, help people really frame it in an intersectional lens, as Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw has so beautifully written about. The second thing is to follow and support women of color who are leaders. That's very important. The third thing is to listen, to read, to know history, and don't give up on learning. We need to learn every day, every minute. The fourth thing is to look around. If you're at a table where decisions are being made, if you're at a coalition and you look around and it is all people who look exactly like you, that's a problem. We need to make sure that when we're creating agendas, when we are setting priorities, it is not only white women at the decision-making tables. And that is the role of white women, to look around and expand the table or throw the table out and create another table altogether. The fifth thing is to know that it's okay to be imperfect. We are all imperfect. I have yet to meet a perfect person. I have screwed up probably 100 times on this stage right now, right? It's okay to be imperfect, but keep going. It's important. The sixth thing, and this is the last thing, is to embrace the facts that we all have blinders on, and to commit to yourself every single day to look around your blinders, to look for where your blinders are happening, and to keep going again. Because again, we have so much to gain together. There is literally no gender justice without racial justice, without economic justice. And white women need to step up in organizing white women yesterday. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Our next dynamic duo is here to talk about the Green Wave. Please welcome the Executive Director, Women's Equality Center, and the CEO and co-founder of Luz Media. It's Paula Avila-Guillen and Lucy Flores.
Hello. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing so far? We're like almost there, yes? Okay, this is good. Look, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I know, listen, it's tough up here, you know? Like, you got to get that energy. You got to feel like someone's excited. Thank you. Thank you. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on introductions because, as you can see, these are some very short, little, brief conversations, and this is a very big topic, and a topic that I believe is literally one of the most critical that we can be having right now. How many, just by show of hands, how many people have heard of the Marea Verde or the Green Wave? Amazing.
Wow.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So I'm Lucy Flores. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Luz Media. We are a digital publisher that centers the Latina US experience. You can check us out at luzmedia.co. I just recently had the opportunity to publish a series on the Marea Verde. And one of the first people that I ended up connecting with and talking with, and who was recommended that I should talk with in order to start investigating the origins of the Green Wave, but most importantly, how that affects us in the United States, was Paula. And we're just going to jump right into this because literally the expert, one of the definitive experts on the Marea Verde in the entire world is sitting with us right here. So we want to hear everything that she has to say. Paula, let's start off at the very beginning. Tell us, I mean, most people have heard of the Green Wave, but tell us very briefly, what is it and how did it start?
Well, I am very excited to be here, and I also recognize my privilege in being here. I am talking about the Green Wave, but the Green Wave doesn't belong to me, right? The Green Wave is a movement, and I am telling the stories of millions of people who are part of this movement. The Green Wave was the movement that was born in Argentina around abortion rights, and that has taken over the entire region. And is taking over practically at this point parts of the world. Just to give you a highlight of what has happened in the last 3 years in Latin America, but in December 2020, Argentina legalized abortion. Then in September 2021, Mexico Supreme Court said that no person should go to prison because of an abortion. Then February 2020, Colombia, the Constitutional Court of Colombia, legalized abortion in the first 24 weeks. Then we were able to decriminalize emergency contraception in March of this year. And during that process, we also freed all the women who had been in prison for obstetric emergencies in El Salvador. In 3 years, we were able to completely change. We were able to completely change the landscape of Latin American reproductive rights. And that was a result of many years of work. That didn't happen in 3 years. Just in 3 years, we were able to cosechar, pick up all the work, and that's what we call the Green Wave, to that big movement and momentum that was created in Latin America.
I have a couple follow-up questions, but let's talk about the handkerchief, the pañuelo. What is the significance there, and how does that tie in? I mean, it's something so simple. It's a bandana. And it doesn't even have to be a bandana, just like something green, right? But what is the significance of something so simple in literally what you just explained as something like entirely revolutionary, life-changing, culture-shifting Because we have to remember, what's important to remember here, and what I find so fascinating about what we can learn from this Latin American movement, is that we are talking about countries that are religiously machista. The religious culture is baked into the system, right? So extremist, conservative religious viewpoints that are imposed on people via culture, that and which includes laws, et cetera. So, you know, these are countries that we don't normally think of as like bastions of, you know, feminism, right? And yet they have managed to move in the literal opposite direction than the United States, which, by the way, globally is very much considered to be somewhat favorable for women, right? Maybe not the bastion of feminism, but the leaders when it comes to women's rights. And yet we are doing the exact opposite. So having said all that, how does something so massive and so complicated like that get tied in with something that is sitting on your lap?
I think the best answer is the picture behind me. So just imagine that picture without the green pañuelo. Without the green pañuelo, without all the green, is a group of people marching. With the green pañuelo, is a movement for a very specific issue, right? And I think it makes a difference because when people march for multiple issues, right, as an elected official, you're like, oh yes, they're protesting. But here they had a very direct call. They were marching for one specific thing, and that gives political power. So the pañuelo, it started in Argentina. It comes from the mothers who lost their children during the Argentinian dictatorship, and they will wear the scarf around their heads. It was a white scarf, and it was a symbol of protest, of resistance. So when the creators of La Campaña Nacional por el Aborto Legal, Seguro y Gratuito in Argentina, there was a coalition of organizations that led this fight in Argentina, decided that they needed to have a symbol to unite a broad coalition and a symbol that will serve as umbrella for multiple movements. They decided to take the pañuelo and they decided to make it green because abortion is hope, abortion is life, and green represent those two things, life and health. And that is the beginning of the pañuelo. And the pañuelo, this one says abortion is freedom, but each country has been able to adapt the pañuelo to whatever it is their context. And I think that that also allows for a movement that is bigger, broader, because you still have an umbrella, but you can make it your own.
Yeah. We only have a few minutes left, but you did a panel prior to this, and one of the things that came up was just kind of like how we as individuals can do something.
Yes.
And I brought up the point that we have large organizations, right, reproductive health and justice organizations that have been very much leading strategy, if you will, for the rest of us. And we haven't ended up in a place that is favorable for us, despite all of the work, right? So one of the questions that I personally had when I was investigating the Marea Verde and how that could apply here in the United States is the simple things that we can do despite the fact that maybe organizationally we are being led in a different way. And I'll give you an example. The fact that we couldn't even say the word or use the word abortion for so long. It was a euphemism always. It was choice. It was reproductive something or other. It was never the word, I had an abortion, I want an abortion, it is my legal right, period, right? We were never unapologetic about our bodily autonomy, about us, about our lives, about our futures. So, and also because we are short on time, I mean, we really should have had an entire hour for this, but if you do want, we did one article. If you go to luzmedia.co, it's the 3 lessons that U.S.-based women, doesn't even have to be advocates, right? Just women can take away the 3 lessons learned from the Latin American Green Wave. Go to luzmedia.co. It's there. I highly recommend you read it. But Paula, let's close this out because I want people to take something tangible from this. And I'll just say very briefly, and I'll end here, the thing that I most take from this, that I actually feel is tangible, but doesn't sound very tangible, is hope.
Yes.
When I see this, I see what's possible for us. And when I see this, understanding that this movement was people-led and people-powered, they didn't need hundreds of millions of dollars from, the Planned Parenthoods of the world. Again, no shade to Planned Parenthood. They do incredible work, but they did not need $100 million to accomplish this. They just needed every individual there with that green pañuelo. And yes, there was some leadership involved, but I get chills in thinking like that could be us, right?
And it could be us,
Yeah.
right? And we have seen the power. And I think there is, when we show up, right? So it has all the potential of being us, but it took them 10 years to have that, right? And they march every Tuesday. And sometimes there were 1 woman, sometimes there were 10, sometimes like in that day, and I was there was 1 million, right? And I think that what, for me, is one of the biggest lessons that we have to have is that this is a long-term fight, and we need to have a long-term strategy. It cannot be just, I need to pass this law to fix this, because we are fighting an entire system that is oppressing us in multiple different ways. So I think there is just have a long-term vision and have a lot of consistency and showing up every single time and in every single way. Lucy, you have been doing, you at this point has been helping to spread the word of the Marea Verde. You have been helping us in this mission that nobody gave us, but we decided to take, of bringing something from the south to the north, which is unusual and is not what normally happens. What do you think they are the lessons? Like you at this point, you know the movement, and you're sitting also, in a sense, as a few of us sit with the heart split between 2 places. Beyond that you just told us, what else do you think there will be lessons that you will see applicable for what we are living right now in the United States?
I got to say the biggest lesson for me, I think, was that we have to trust ourselves and we know our communities. If the national narrative is saying choice and whatever, okay, that's fine, but we have agency. And that's what I saw in the Marea Verde that was really, it was not only inspirational, but it was so smart. Because I think that one of the things that I took the most from you was that this worked because everyone had the ability to adapt to their communities. And so what you go home and say in Michigan versus Florida versus California versus Texas, that message is going to be really different. And maybe in some places, you don't come out and say necessarily abortion, right? Maybe it's a different conversation, and maybe it takes a little bit longer to get there, and maybe California makes it a lot faster. But we have to start, I think, and also understanding that this is the long game, right? Listen, we didn't lose our rights overnight. No. They played the long game. And they've been playing it for a while, literally since Roe passed in the 70s, right? And even before then. So they had patience and they had commitment. And so we have to have the same amount of patience and the same amount of commitment to get that back and to move forward. So I think that would be the biggest thing, is that, remember that no one knows your community better than you. No one knows your family, no one knows your friends. You are the most important influencer in your community, in your home, in your little bubble, right? And your words are powerful. Yes. And so you know how to talk to people, you know how to organize, and if it is only 5 people, it's 5 people, and then that's going to turn into 10 and, yes, whatever. But I think that's the biggest thing for me.
And I agree, and something that I frequently encounter when we do this work is why to fight for abortion when we also know that our communities have so many issues, right? So even when you're talking to people in the community, they're like, well, but, there are 300 issues and 300 ways into a system oppress us. And one of the things that I tell everybody why we need to fight for abortion is because I believe abortion is at the core of our autonomy, at the core of our freedom. You know, how can you be free if you're not able to control what happens in your body, right? So we need to liberate ourselves to be able to choose whatever life we had and whatever fight we can have. And I think that they are trying to oppress us in this issue because they know that they are tackling something so intimate that is like kind of like a baggage that we are carrying that doesn't let us to do all the other fights. And secondly, because I think it was the low-hanging fruit. They start fighting with abortion, but if we don't fight back, they are coming for all of our rights.
Yeah, I wanted you to say that part because we have 45 seconds left, and that part really, ooh, that got me in my feels when she said this at the panel earlier. It was that part. It was abortion to them is the low-hanging fruit. Yes. And if we don't aggressively fight back, they will come for the rest.
Yes, yes.
And we've seen this time, this isn't fear mongering, right? No. This is based on fact, it's based on history, it's based on what we're seeing already. We're starting to see the criminalization of miscarriages now. This isn't getting better, it's only getting worse. And so this is that time when we come together, we do what's necessary in our communities, and we fight for ourselves and the future of our families, our kids, et cetera. Because, listen, I'm not willing to see, we've already seen it. We've already seen it in other Latin American countries. We don't need to see that here. Paula, thank you so much.
Thank
Look at that,
you.
at
This
zero.
is awesome.
We're so good.
Good timing.
High five,
timing.
high five.
Wow.
We didn't get the bell, we didn't get anything. Discipline. Thank you, everyone.
Our next fireside chat explores the work of men in building a feminist future. Please welcome Akib Yaqub, Chief of Staff of Women's March, and Milwaukee's very own Mayor Cavalier Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's wonderful to see you. My name is Akib Yaqub. I'm Chief of Staff at Women's March. I've been around super behind the scenes, powering and supporting the incredible women who have been building this mass movement for the last, I can't tell time anymore, last many years. But today it is my privilege and honor to have a conversation with Mayor Johnson about men's role in building a feminist future. Right? We all have men in our lives, good or bad, right? I got some laughs, so I'll take it. So I'm hoping this conversation can help the men in the room, but also are some things that we can take back home and the men watching and joining us virtually. So I'll give a bit of an intro to Mayor Johnson, and then we'll have a conversation about what men can do to bring this work from the stage into our everyday lives. So in April 2022, the people of Milwaukee elected Mayor Johnson as the 45th chief executive of the city of Milwaukee. Earning more than 70% of the vote, Mayor Johnson became the first black elected mayor in the city. Let's give it up. And only the fourth elected mayor in the past 62 years. I had to Google and research into that. I was like, what is happening there? Mayor Johnson's commitment to public service began at an early age when he was selected by the YMCA to participate in a pre-college program for low-income Milwaukee public school students. So similarly, my activism and my work began at a very young age. At 13, I watched Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, and I was fired up in middle school, and I was like, we're gonna save the bumblebees. I jumped into organizing, I jumped into this work, and I've been here for now over half of my life, right? So we have that in us, but many men are not in that space. Many men do not engage in movement building work. Many men feel hesitant or unaware of their place in the feminist movement or the women's movement, often due to misconceptions, societal pressures, etc. So Mayor Johnson, what do you believe are some of the biggest challenges men face in joining this movement? And what are some specific things we can do to address these barriers?
Well, thank you for the question. And by the way, thank you for your work as well and getting involved at a young age. You know, when I think about the feminist movement and, you know, men's, not lack of desire, but perhaps misconceptions about their place in being involved in the feminist movement, I think that it's it's difficult sometimes to look in the mirror. It's difficult to look in the mirror because when we talk about some of the challenges that women face in our society, some of the societal pressures that they face, those things are in place because of men.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it can sometimes be very difficult for men to come to grips with that and for them to say, you know, how do I become a part of the solution when my gender is the one that is perpetuating the difficulties that women tend to face when they're out there trying to be involved in the economy, when they're trying to have autonomy in their own bodies, when they have the responsibility, the chief responsibility for child rearing and child raising, when in years past the inability of women to simply go to the polls and vote for their elected leaders. You know, all those things are creations, much like race, and they were created by men. And so I think those are the sort of challenges that we have to get beyond. And how do we do that, though? It's things like this, right? We listen, we talk, we engage, and we don't shrink away from those challenges. We have to continue to bring those up. We have to continue to bring those to men and let men know that they too can be a part of the solution here. If these are things that men work to create, then they can also be things that men work to change around.
So sometimes this idea of that change just feels so giant, it feels enormous, right? Because what you're talking and really getting to is cultural change, right? It's attitudes change. That takes a mental amount of effort in a lot of people. And I also, you know, as folks living in this life, right, that we live, life is hard, all of these things, the things that we learn, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, the patriarchy that surrounds us, becomes us in so many ways. And the older you get, the more difficult it becomes to unlearn that, right? And that unlearning is important and critical. But I'm wondering, for the next generation of men, right? For the next generation of boys, what are the things that we can do so, you know, we can break these cycles and they don't have to do so much unlearning?
You know, so President Joe Biden, I think, does a really great job when he talks about his own upbringing. And there's one thing that he says in particular that I think all of us have learned, but some of us need some reminding of. And he talks about the lesson that he learned when he was a kid. And he says that, you know, his parents would tell him, you know, Joey, nobody is better than you, but you are also no better than anybody else. And for boys, I think specifically, they've got to understand that that does not equate just to their relationship with other young men. That also equates to their relationship with young women as well, right? Just because you're a man, just because you're a male, just because you're a boy or a man does not make you inherently better than a woman or a female or a girl. And we all have got work to do in order to make sure that young men understand that. Look, I'm a dad of 3 kids. I've got a 5-year-old twin daughters, and I've got a 13-year-old son. And I constantly try to work to tell my son, you know, when you're out there and you're interacting with your friends, especially friends that are girls, or if you are thinking about saying something or doing something to a young lady, think in the back of your mind about how you would feel if another young man did the same thing to one of your sisters, right? You have to keep that in the back of your mind. And all of us can do that, right? All of us were birthed by a woman. Many of us have sisters or nieces or cousins who are females. So we have to keep those things in the back of our mind as we work to instill the values of feminism into boys growing up in demand, so they can automatically and already be a part of this movement without having to go back and help to try to rejigger them and get them to learn what they should know from an earlier age in the first place.
I'm gonna actually have a follow-up there that I'm curious about. I was taking a class recently, a data class, funny enough, and we actually looked at data of men's engagement in social movements, right? Men's caring about environmental issues, etc. And it turns out that most men, statistically significant ways, once they have a daughter, they care more.
Yeah.
As soon as you have a daughter, you tend to care more about planet and people. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's probably true. I've got twins, so I care twice as much. You know, all of our children are special, but it's really special, at least for a dad anyway. I feel like when you become a girl dad, because you know I'm gonna try not to cry on the. You know, you get older, you have kids, and like the waterworks just start to. But my babies, my little girls, they're just the most precious things, and I don't want for. In the context of what we're talking about right now, like I don't want for my girls to encounter a young man who would treat them disrespectfully, who would not value them, who would not honor them, who would hurt them in any form or fashion. So yeah, I think you really do begin to care, or you should begin to care about issues like these when you become a dad, but particularly when you become a dad of a precious little girl, and a smart little girl, and a sweet little girl, and sometimes a sassy little girl, but a little girl who you love, and a girl who you know needs protection, especially in this world, because you know what kind of men sometimes are out there.
Yeah, and I think it's so critical for so many men before they become fathers and realize that for themselves to bring those truths into their own realities. Right? So I'm going to shift the tone of the conversation a little bit and talk a bit about what you've been doing here in Milwaukee. Right? We've been talking about building a feminist future. This entire Fireside Chat series has been about building a feminist future. How do you, in your capacity as mayor of Milwaukee, incorporate these roles into your own practices and policies?
Yeah, sure. So just earlier today, I was at our 18th annual Fatherhood Summit, where we're working to make sure that dads get the tools that they need to become good dads, and for good dads to become great dads, and for great dads to become fantastic dads. And part of my desire in doing that is to make sure that those men are there for their kids, and especially there for their daughters, and really there for their sons, to do what we were just talking about. But this is what I believe. I think that in the course of this, men need to do a better job of listening, right? And I don't mean listening just in terms of lending an ear. I mean listening with intent. That means working to make sure that they learn from women, working to make sure that they internalize issues that are important to women, making sure that they support women, making sure that they team up with women, making sure that they empower women, and making sure that they nurture women as well. Listen. Men should listen. And in my administration, I think that we're doing exactly that. We're working with a number of women in my administration to take on some of the challenges that they find in the workplace right now. But it isn't just that. I mean, we've worked to make sure that women are in key positions, key roles in my administration. So when folks in Wisconsin, whether they're farmers or manufacturers or whatnot, they're trying to get their products to market across the United States or around the world, and those products go out by sea, there's a woman who runs the Milwaukee port. It's fall now, so leaves are going to start coming down, and after that it'll be winter, and hopefully we don't get too much snow, but that probably will happen. It is Wisconsin after all. There's a woman who's responsible for making sure that the streets are clear in Milwaukee. If there's a person in our community that has some need to get back into the workforce, get connected with a good paying, family supporting job, well, it's a woman that leads that organization right here in Milwaukee. For those of you that have traveled here from other localities across the country, you see a lot of cranes in the sky, a lot of development that's happening in the city of Milwaukee, and I'm proud of that. One of the leaders in our city department responsible for making that happen is a woman. and so on and so forth. I may have so many other examples of women who are empowered in my administration, and they're giving back to our community right here each and every single day.
I love that. And, if there's one thing I will add there, too, is that I think it's important that we listen to women, but also as men, learning to take a step back and follow the lead of women. Understanding that our lived experiences are not the same. So how we see and live and move in this world is not the same experience of everyone else out there, right? And I think this is such an important conversation that we're starting here today, and I'm looking forward to us continuing this into the future. And Mayor Johnson, I'm so grateful for you joining us this afternoon and for your time, right? Thank you so much.
Happy to join you. Thank you.
Here to talk about the role of labor in building a feminist future, please welcome Amanda Rivera, an 11-year Starbucks partner and union organizer based in Atlanta, Georgia. Joining her is Tori Tambolini, a 4-year Starbucks partner and union organizer from Pittsburgh. She currently works with Starbucks Workers United.
When you got it like that.
Howdy, y'all.
Yeah, it's good to see everyone here. Yeah, we just wanted to talk a bit about the movement and how we built it and where we're going from here. And I think it's important to start at the very beginning. With the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, I kind of recently found out that a lot of people at my store had no idea that Workers United is a descendant of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. And that was one of the first unions to be where the majority of the members were women and largely immigrant women. And they were censored by their companies in every way possible. They were blacklisted from the industries that they worked in. They were beaten by police officers and by anti-union security firms hired by the company. And they faced so many of the issues that we still face today. And it's because of their courage that we are able to do what we do now. They kind of set the stage for this, and it's because of their sacrifices that we have the courage and the right to do what we're doing today with Starbucks Workers United.
I think it's safe to say we also feel a responsibility to carry on the legacy of the women and the workers that came before us. It's the rights that we have were fought for, and people were injured and died for the rights that we have. And, we don't think about, a 40-hour work week. That was something that was not going to be given to workers. They had to fight for it. And so we find ourselves in a similar place. And, it's just honestly been the honor of a lifetime to have the trust of my coworkers and to be able to, help lead and teach people. That's one awesome thing about the movement that we are building. It's us training each other. We are there to help each other and be advocates for each other. And we learn things from each other every day that makes, our organizing stronger, makes our fight even stronger. And it's important that we carry everyone along with us because that's how we're gonna win. Starbucks is waging an egregious union busting campaign against us. And Starbucks, 72% of the workers at Starbucks are women. And so this is an active war against women and women's rights. And so that's, big part of why we fight.
Absolutely. And when we say women, we are using an expanded definition of the word women, not just cisgender white women, but women who are queer, non-white, trans women, immigrant women, non-binary people who have the experience, have the women's experience, and our movement is so inclusive. And I think that's why a lot of us started working at Starbucks, because we saw Starbucks as this really progressive company. And I think we were all collectively really disappointed when we actually got there. And Starbucks doesn't really support their marginalized workers in a way that is sincere. It's very performative. And I think that really hurts a lot of people, since it is so performative and they're not doing this in a genuine way. And they're seen as the most progressive company, and we're taught, it leads us to this conclusion that Starbucks is the best we can do. This is as progressive as it gets, and if you don't like it, then leave. That's a sentiment that I've heard a lot, being on this campaign. But if Starbucks is the most progressive company, allegedly, then where are we supposed to go from here, you know? And I think it leaves us with a choice. Like, are we going to accept this? Are we going to accept that this is the best that we can get? Or are we going to like fight to raise the status quo and like develop from here? And I spend so much of my time just convincing workers that they do deserve better. So that's something that's been really difficult.
Yeah, and I don't know about y'all, but I am tired of performative, progressive companies acting like they care about people. You know, we are gonna force Starbucks to be the company that they say they are. And at the end of the day, we are the ones in stores creating the environment that Starbucks makes their money off of. The third place, the inclusivity, all of that stuff, that is us, you know? And so that's why it's so important that we stay par for the course. We make sure that we are educating each other. I mean, we are doing all kinds of training every day. We're doing training on labor law and how to de-escalate with police when Starbucks calls the police on us, because we're not on strike to them. We are protesters and we are violent. And so that puts our lives at risk, you know? And so it's just a constant fight, but we are training each other. We are looking out for each other in a way that the company has not shown up for us in a long time. I'm sure you've heard this, but Starbucks hangs a lot of its benefits over our head like a carrot. You know, we're trying to get that carrot all the time, but our hours are cut. We need 20 hours a week to get benefits. Sometimes we're getting 7. You know, I mean, what am I gonna do with 7 hours a week? We have to get multiple jobs. We're doing so many different things. And at the end of the day, don't workers deserve better? Are we tired of taking the bare minimum?
Absolutely.
And why is it that women are the ones that are, you know, not just women, but a lot of women at the company are struggling? And that's not just women, that's families. Those are children, you know? And so the things we are fighting for are so many different things, but it includes, you know, better healthcare, guaranteed hours. Actually, back to the healthcare that is all-inclusive and that the company pays for. You know, as we grow, I would love to see childcare be something that we advocate for. More time for people to take after having, you know, a child. Starbucks only gives you, I think, 6 weeks of pay, and then after that you can take more time, but you only get 66% of the average of what you made in the past 6 months. And if you're only working 7 hours a week, 66% of that is nothing, you know? And it's just so egregious that they pretend like all the things they offer us are, you know, benefits, which they are ideally, but they're just fluff. And so we have been fighting for all of these rights, and it includes abortion benefits, trans health care. You know, I mean, it's really all inclusive. Here in Milwaukee, about 15 minutes from here, well, all around the nation, Starbucks withheld abortion benefits for union Starbucks workers. So if you were in a state where you needed to get care like that, Starbucks would, you know, provide a benefit to help you get the health care you need in another state where you could get that kind of health care, but not for non-union or not for union stores. And so recently, what was it, the other day, like 2 days ago?
Yeah, I think it was on Friday.
Yeah, Friday. We had a judge rule that that was illegal, and Starbucks is going to have to give us that benefit.
Absolutely. It's been kind of crazy to watch how Starbucks will do and say literally anything to discredit the people within this movement. And this has been like such a difficult journey. And throughout this weekend, we've talked a lot about like community. And I think that is the biggest strength that we have here, because the community that we've built at Starbucks Workers United is every billion-dollar company's worst fear. Like every billion-dollar company is looking at us and just absolutely quaking. Because when we have this sense of community and we're not going to stand for that kind of stuff, we're not going to stand for withheld benefits, and we're going to stand up for ourselves and each other, that's the most powerful thing that we could possibly have. Like, we are standing in solidarity with each other, and I think another thing that makes this movement really powerful is that we use this learn it, do it, teach it model. So for example, I learned how to organize my store from an organizer in Pittsburgh. Her name's Daisy Pitkins, shout out to her. And I did it at my own store, and after I finished doing that, I started teaching other stores how to do the same thing. And that goes not just for like the organizing process, but also for things like how to go on strike, how to get safety measures at your store, like sharps disposal boxes or Narcan training. So I think that's great because I learned how to do it myself, and now when I teach it to other people, I learn things myself while I'm teaching them. I learn new perspectives. When I talk to workers who have different experiences than I have, like workers who are Black or trans or immigrant women, every time I teach them something, they share with me how they're going to apply it in their store, and it kind of creates this snowball effect of like the training is getting more and more perspectives added to it. And I think that's so like powerful and such an advantage to this campaign. It's a worker-led movement, and it's such a strength.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are building a feminist foundation, you know, a voting bloc of young people that are progressive. Right now we have 360 plus stores nationwide, over 10,000 Starbucks workers nationwide. Now imagine if we double that number or triple that number or, you know, quadruple that number, we are going to be a solid voting bloc that is going to hold people accountable. We're not just going to allow big corporations to make, you know, work with legislations and decide what we are worth and what we deserve. We're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I am very proud to be, you know, able to work with so many wonderful people that teach me things every day. But yeah, I mean, we're tough and we're gonna keep going. One thing I did love, maybe y'all have seen, fast food workers in California just won a $20 minimum wage. Yeah. You know, McDonald's was fighting it, Starbucks, In-N-Out, you name it, they were working against us. And I was in New York in June. I met this really wonderful woman, Lisette Aguilar. She is an organizer at her McDonald's in Los Angeles. And she told me, and I tried not to cry, she said she saw what Starbucks could do. And because of that, they took a leap of faith and they walked out of their store when they were having issues. They had a coworker who came in sick. She couldn't go home, she had to work. After her shift, she called an ambulance and they took her to the hospital where she died 2 weeks later. And that's the reality of a lot of these jobs. You know, it's just, we are there to make profit and you need to be quiet and do your job. And that is just not good enough anymore, you know? And like Tori said, we are the International Garment Workers Union. You know, we stand on the shoulders of women that said that is enough and we are gonna stand up for ourselves. And we just have to do the same thing. It's scary sometimes, but I think we have definitely grown in our convictions and stronger, and now you can't tell me nothing, you know, as far as the company, you know. And it's just so empowering. I have coworkers that are shy people that don't want to be the ones standing at the front line, but are passionate about social justice and, you know, women's rights and all kinds of stuff. And they've found their voice in the movement. People that are quiet are saying, I need the bullhorn, I got something to say. And it's just so empowering. And so it's great to have this opportunity and to be with so many wonderful people.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about the entire labor movement. It's such a welcoming movement where everybody has a place. I remember, honestly, whenever I started organizing at my store, I didn't know what a union was. It was the first time I had ever really heard of that, and I didn't know that there was a way to make change within my store, but once my coworkers and I did learn about it, we took it and ran with it. And we filed for our election, and the next day, one of the union staffers that was helping me asked if I could speak at the AFL-CIO convention, and I agreed, and I was so nervous. I was like shaking and sweating. I was panicking. And my speech ended with, on behalf of all the partners at the Market Square Starbucks, can I get a hell yeah? And everybody in the entire room stood up and shouted, hell yeah. And that's the moment I realized I'm gonna do this forever. Like, I love this. And I've met so many incredible people, like within the labor movement, from the United Steelworkers to the Pittsburgh News Guild, to everybody at Starbucks Workers United. And they've all just been so welcoming, and the labor movement is just, it's somewhere where everybody has a place, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, what your identity is, there is a place for you in the labor movement. And it's incredible because we get so many perspectives, and there's so much strength in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, it feels like we, for the first time in a long time, can build the world that we want to see. We're not gonna just sit by while they take our rights away. We're gonna withhold our labor. We are gonna, show up to City Hall. We are definitely a force to be reckoned with, and it feels so good to really just own it and just be it. I definitely found myself in the movement, and like Tori said, everyone has to work, and that's where we can affect change. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but what it all comes back to is work, and that's where I can, create the most change. So it's been really amazing.
Yeah, it's been so inspiring to watch people like realize that Starbucks isn't like this great company that has everybody's best interests in mind and they're super progressive. We've all collectively realized that companies like Starbucks are doing the bare minimum, and not only do we deserve better, but we have the power to change it. And I know that there's like a lot of campaigns where this has happened. Starbucks definitely isn't like the first campaign where that has happened, but it's a very public-facing campaign. It's a company that we all saw as progressive before the campaign started. And like breaking down that image and breaking down the barriers to creating change and making people realize that it is possible, I think is going to really help us build like a feminist future where we can all have our voices heard, we can all have a seat at the table, because we now know that it is possible.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
For our final fireside, women's work in building a strong democracy, please welcome the Executive Director of the National Council of Jewish Women, Sheila Katz, and the President and CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities, Maria Town.
Maria.
Hi, Sheila.
This is really exciting for us because we've known each other for quite some time.
Yes.
I think you were working at the White House.
I was a staffer doing lots of grunt work at the White House, and you were a staffer at Hillel.
Yeah, at Hillel International, a Jewish campus organization, and we've become friends.
Yes.
And then we both are millennials and became CEOs of large civil rights legacy organizations right around the same time, which was right before COVID started.
Yes.
And so I think that would lead us to the first question that I have for you. Can you talk about navigating COVID as a new CEO within your organization, the American Association of People with Disabilities, and where the disability community is at right now in their conversation on COVID?
Sure. So when the news about COVID first hit, I think many in the disability community were terrified because we knew that this virus would impact disabled people most disproportionately. And sure enough, when we had the first cases in the United States, the guidance that came out from our national public health organizations was, don't worry, this will only affect the elderly and the vulnerable. And what they mean by the elderly and the vulnerable is disabled people. And we became this kind of acceptable loss. And that has been maintained really over the past 3.5 years. To answer the second half of your question, there are still many, many disabled people across the United States who continue to isolate, who continue to mask consistently, and who actually avoid necessary healthcare interventions, because one of the places you're most likely to get COVID is at a hospital or a doctor's office where masks are no longer required. And it is very tricky because I think there is a real craving for community. Many people are connecting in person. Lots of even our greatest allies and organizations are no longer offering ways to participate that aren't in person. And then bringing this to like the democracy theme, a huge part of the way we think about our democracy is who we see in public space.
Yes.
And disabled people have fought for generations to have the right to exist in public. And if we continue to need to isolate to keep ourselves safe, what does it mean for the inclusiveness of our democracy? So that's a question that weighs on my heart all the time these days.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And Sheila, I know you just got off a plane from Israel. How are you doing?
Yeah. Thanks for asking, and thanks for being one of the people who checked in on me. You know, I literally just got off a plane from Israel. I happen to knew at this point 6 of the hostages. One of my best friends' family of 5 are among them, and 2 of the family members, a grandmother and her granddaughter with autism, were confirmed to have been killed just on Thursday when I was there. And 3 of them are still hostages, including a 12-year-old boy. And one of NCJW's main partners, Vivian Silver, who founded an organization called Women Wage Peace. I'd like to think she'd be here right now, an organization that brings together Palestinians, Arabs, and Israelis, women, to promote peace together. She's also among the hostages. And so this has been really heavy, and I know I'm not alone in being in pain and having deeply personal connections to people who are hurting right now, whether it be those of us who know and love people who were murdered on October 7th in Israel, and those who know and love Palestinian civilians who have been killed since. And what I can say is it's hard to be fully present in this moment for so many of us here.
Yeah.
And my heart is really with everyone who is navigating such tremendous loss. I do want to name, as we're thinking about navigating leadership in crisis times, that half of the Jewish population lives in Israel, and we're a small people. And most of us in the Jewish community know somebody who's directly impacted, and I'm hurting, and my whole staff team is hurting. And it's also important to name that on Saturday, October 7th, that was the largest mass killing of Jews since the Holocaust, something our community has not needed to navigate at this scale before. And it was done in such a brutal way. Like, I don't even want to say all the things out loud. It was done in such a brutal way that disproportionately targeted women, children, and families. And so we're holding this, and I completely understand that things have happened since that day that pull our attention to different spaces. And lots of people have other things that they're navigating in their life. But on Saturday, October 7th, and that weekend, it really felt, for the most part, like radio silence from people that we were in deep community with. And that's why, Maria, you reaching out was so meaningful. And I can only hope, you can applaud that, that's good. I can only hope to highlight from this stage that silence that we heard, because we need each other more than ever. And there's no roadmap for unprecedented moments. But it's not too late to show love for the people that you know who are impacted. And if I'm honest, it took me until yesterday to reach out to many of my Muslim friends and partners because of all I've been personally holding, and I'm grieving right now. And I'm glad I didn't let time be an indicator to not reach out. And I think in this moment, especially in a community here, we can either choose to be divisive on social media or actually come together across the relationships that we've spent time building and have the tough conversations with curiosity, with empathy. And I would just own and honor that National Council of Jewish Women is here to have those conversations with people who are interested, and grateful and encouraging for everybody who's checking in on our community and everybody who's really impacted in this moment. Yeah. It's weird to transition from something like that. But speaking of kind of these topics and us knowing each other, one of the things that's come up for both of us that I've heard from you is actually a lot about voting and the voting, the barriers to voting, disabled people's experience voting. And I know for 30 years, your organization has been fighting since so many disabled people don't have the right to vote. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about how you're navigating that situation?
Yeah. So Sheila just referenced that many disabled people right now in 2023 do not have the right to vote. And I'm referring to people who are in guardianship or conservatorships. How many of you followed the Free Britney movement? Yes?
Yes.
Right? When Britney Spears was under her conservatorship, she could not vote. The young man who was the topic of The Blind Side, right, in his adult conservatorship or adult guardianship. All of these individuals, thousands of people across the United States, are stripped of their sacred right to vote when entering into these guardianships. Many individuals who are placed into congregate settings like nursing homes may not be stripped of their right to vote, but they are often denied access to information about elections and denied opportunities to vote because they are not given access to computers or iPads, for example. So at AAPD, the American Association of People with Disabilities, we have a voting initiative called Rev Up. Rev Up stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power. And through Rev Up, we have 32 state disability voting coalitions that are comprised of local centers for independent living, protection and advocacy organizations, leagues of women voters, et cetera. And we do candidate forums to educate candidates on issues that are important to disabled people, voter registration efforts, and we try to remove barriers to the polls. The majority of polls in the United States have some kind of access barrier. For me personally, I used to actually work in a polling place, and one time I went to vote, I needed an accessible machine, and it was broken, or it wasn't working. And the accessible machine is not only accessible to people who are blind, but it's also at a lower height in case you're using a wheelchair or scooter. And the poll worker told me, it's a short ballot, you can stand, you'll be fine. Many people with disabilities also don't have current identification. So we do a lot of work with other organizations like Vote Riders to make sure that voters have access to get current IDs, and we try to push against this wave of state laws that are suppressing the vote. And I want to highlight the trend that we're seeing that's criminalizing getting assistance while voting, because it's specifically criminalizing people who would provide assistance at the polls, not necessarily the voters themselves. Well, when we're thinking about disabled voters who may need assistance, the people providing that support are predominantly women, and are predominantly women of color. So these laws are suppressing disabled people's votes, they're suppressing women's votes, and they're suppressing people of color's votes, and all of these fights are interconnected. However, going back to my first point, many people don't think about people with disabilities when thinking about voter constituencies. And if you go to your Secretary of State's website and look up voters with disabilities, the first thing that you're going to see is absentee voting.
Yep.
And absentee voting is wonderful. I want it to be as easy as possible in all 50 states to vote via absentee ballot. But again, disabled people have fought for the right to show up in public and exist in accessible spaces, and we need that within our civic structures.
Amen to that.
And I know, like, you have done so much work around voting and civic engagement. It's one of the places where we've worked together the most, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm happy. The National Council of Jewish Women just turned 130 years old. Thank you. Yeah, and we've been working on voting from the beginning when women didn't have the right to vote. And so the only thing I'd add as we wrap up, I guess, a few things. One is, when I look at the issue of voting, it's actually a place that gives me hope. Like, I know we're holding so much and there's a lot more we need to do to make things more accessible, to make sure everybody has the right to vote. And when I look back to where this organization was 130 years ago, it's incredible to see how far we've come, and I like to celebrate that as we go. Wherever there is an opportunity for marginalized people to have power, there are going to be people who try to take that power away, which is why on this issue in particular, I just love it so much, because so many groups come together and are aligned in that fight for inclusion, accessibility, and to build that power for each of us in this country. And so I'm glad that we've been partnering together, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't close a little as a faith leader with maybe some Torah, right? So in Judaism, there's something we like to say, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. And in the Torah, there is no word written twice. So people are always like, why does it say justice twice? And it says justice twice because you have to pursue justice, and you have to pursue justice in a just way. So it is not enough that a lot of people have a right to vote in this country. It will be enough when we work collaboratively to make sure everybody has the right to vote and access to vote in this country. And I'm glad we get to work on that together.
Me too. We have like 51 seconds left.
Amazing. Look at us, overachievers being done on time. No, what I will just say is it really is a blessing to get to work with Maria. And some people know my mom has a disability in multiple sclerosis. And once you have a loved one or experience that in your lifetime, you navigate the world totally differently. Who is the world designed for? Who is it not designed for? And so I'm so empowered and honored to be your partner in justice and to be here with you.
The feeling is mutual.
Amazing.
And I will just say, in the disability community, we acknowledge that anyone can become disabled at any point in time. And I was born with my disability, but even being born with it has changed a lot as I've aged. And I like to think that everyone will become disabled if they are lucky enough, because it means that we have survived. It means that we are still here. So,
amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you so very much, friends. Thank you. All right, how's everybody doing? I've been sitting backstage watching, and I had the pleasure of just having a really meaningful conversation with the sisters from Starbucks. And I don't know if you guys have caught my vibe, but I'm quite an emotional person. And they were talking about the fights, and one of them was telling us the story about picking beans for Starbucks and finding a child's hat inside of the bag, which means that the bag of beans came from a farm where there was probably a child picking coffee beans. And I don't know, it just felt really emotional and hard. But it also reminded me why we fight. So just wanted to be honest about where I am right now. But before I send you off to the next breakout sessions, I just want to share a few things. Social Justice City is open until 5:30 today, and then it's gonna get shut down because we're gonna party And the dance party is set up for, it will be set up and ready to go at 8:30. So that is the reason why Social Justice City will get shut down at 5:30. So if you want to buy some books, check out a vendor, please do that before 5:30. I can't wait to see you all tonight. I hope you plan on coming to the party. I brought some leg warmers. I'll probably wear these sneakers and little off-the-shoulder fashion, what do you call it? Flash dance. I bought a flash dance shirt. So I'm ready to dance. I'm ready to have some fun. I'm ready to check out DJ Drip Sweat. Something you also may not know about me, I'm a DJ in my other side hustle. I have a lot of jobs. I run the front line in the house. If you remember during the elections of 2020 and 2022, the election defenders and Joy to the Polls, the people who were outside keeping you warm, giving you water, supplying entertainment, trying to keep you safe in line, that's what I do every day. So that's the work I'm gearing up to do. And I work at the Women's March because I love myself and I love all of you. And I think this is really, we have the answers. I think that we all have the answers. I think everything that we need is inside of us, and I think we have the keys to unlock the doors, and so that's why I'm here, because I want to do it with y'all. But anyways, there was a sister that asked me if folks could bring a significant other or a friend with you this evening, if you have a guest with you, and the answer is yes. However, you have to stop at general information and guest services to let them know the name of the person, because in an effort to keep us all safe, you know we got some haters, in an effort to keep everybody safe and contained and have knowledge of who's in the room, we have to give everybody a credential so your family and friends can come. Just please stop by, bring them down. I don't know what they're gonna tell you to do, honestly, so I don't wanna start lying. Just go over there and check out with them and see what you need to do. But you have to bring your credentials. Your credentials will get you 2 drinks, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, doesn't really matter to us, but we will give you 2 beverages. If you're under 21, we got some little special mocktails for you. There'll be soft drinks, there'll be drinks, and there'll be lots of fun. And like I said, DJ Drip Sweat. But now you have 2 more sessions. So right now, just like before, they're on floors 1 and 2. If you forgot what you signed up for or need a refresher, you can always scan your QR code and then go grab some dinner. When the sessions are over, we're not gonna meet back up in here because they're gonna set up the dance floor, but you should go chill, relax, scroll, do whatever it is you wanna do. But please come back tonight because I wanna have some fun with you, and we have DJ Drip Sweat coming, and it's gonna be 80s, 90s, retro vibe, and it should be a lot of fun. So go enjoy, and I'll see you all in a little bit. Have a lovely afternoon.